Tucked up against the jagged spine of the Rockies, Grand Teton National Park is breathtaking. Towering granite peaks, crystal alpine lakes, and some of the most dramatic scenery in the country. It's a paradise for hikers, climbers, and travelers looking to get lost in nature. Here, beauty and danger often live side by side, and sometimes they blur together. Welcome to this installment of Haunted Parks, Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. Welcome to Morbid Outdoors, the podcast that ventures deep into the shadows of the wild. Here, we unravel the mysteries of missing persons, explore spine-chilling legends, and share the most morbid stories that nature has to offer. From the depths of the dense forests to the highest mountain peaks, we'll uncover the secrets that lie hidden in the great outdoors. Join us as we navigate the eerie, the unexplained, and the terrifying. So if you dare, grab your gear and let's embark on a journey into the unknown. This is Morbid Outdoors. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. My name is Elise, and I'm your host, and thank you so much for listening today. I actually am pre-recording this. The school year is very busy for me, but this weekend is Labor Day weekend, and I will be trekking over into Nevada to visit Great Basin National Park for the first time. I've never been, and I'm super excited to go. So I hope you all have a great, long, and restful long weekend that basically marks the end of the summer. But before we get into today's episode, I want to talk about an email I got from a very nice listener named Becky. Becky said I could share, and thank you so much, Becky, for emailing me and allowing me to share. So I don't remember which episode it was, but I said that I would be more afraid of encountering wolves than grizzlies. But Becky grew up in Wyoming, and she actually remembers when wolves were reintroduced. And she says to definitely be more afraid of grizzlies, that there are way more documented grizzly attacks or kills than wolves. Now, wolves tend to avoid people, and you might not ever know that they're around you because they really don't bother you. Grizzlies, on the other hand, will attack you in the right instance, especially with cubs around. This is all coming from Becky. And Becky went on to say that there have been 2 fatal wolf attacks in North America in the last 100 years. And if you follow outdoors news at all, you know that there are way more grizzly attacks than that every year. So yeah, like now I know, thank you, Becky, that I should be way more scared of grizzly bears than wolves. Wolves, for some reason, just seem to scare me more, even though I now know factually that that's not the case. But like, I don't know, there's something about a wolf that just kind of creeps me out. I don't know. It's just creepy. I grew up in a part of Arkansas where there used to be wolves, and my mom actually saw one as a kid. My mascot in high school were the wolves. We were the Lake Hamilton Wolves. So I don't know. Wolves, anyways, Becky provided really great information and just a lot of good like banter. And guys, if you ever send me an email, I will email back. I am busy, but I will always email you back. Maybe if it's not a hate email, but when it's nice and you're telling me information, I always want to learn something new. Becky also said that she went to the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, really a short time ago, a couple years ago, and that she saw 18 grizzlies during her visit and maybe only 4 or 5 wolves. That is crazy. I want to see 18 grizzly bears, Becky. So next time I want to go to Yellowstone, because it's just a day's drive away from me, I'm going to call you, because when I was there, I only saw 3 grizzlies, a mom and 2 cubs, and I was in my car, thank goodness. But how cool of it is an experience that you got to see 18 grizzlies. And let's get into today's case. Now, I have gone to Grand Teton National Park. I went a couple of years ago, and it is absolutely beautiful. I mean, I don't think words can describe just how beautiful and majestic it is. It is vast. The mountains just kind of rise up out of nothing. The lakes are all beautiful. The rivers are just crazy, serene. I don't know. If you've never been, I highly recommend going. This park is absolutely so pretty. So, we had quite a few negative reviews. Our first one is Katie, and she left a review not too long ago. I think it was this past June. And Katie says, they didn't remove the snow from the trails. I fell and broke my finger. There are too many wild animals and bugs, and people. There were no bathrooms at Delta, Taggart, and Amphitheater Lakes, actually along any of the hikes I did. It rained one day and there wasn't proper tree cover on the trail, so I got wet. Did I mention there were a lot of people? Hopefully, this one-star review will warn others not to go. I have so much I want to say about this review, but I'm going to hold it in and I'm going to let you just use your own thoughts because you can probably think of what I would say. That review really was so funny to read and just really sad too. It was just really sad to read as well. Here's another review from Valerie. It's sad that they are so against pets. This place is not pet friendly whatsoever. The rule that dogs can really go only where cars can go is absolutely terrible. It would actually make sense for my dog to be near me on a trail, seeing as they can warn me of a bear or other animal. I would be safer for them. The sights are amazing, but if you have animals, stay away from here. And something I find interesting about when people are mad about parks not being pet friendly, I have a dog and I travel with him, and he goes to most of the national parks we go to. And one thing about it is when I was visiting North Cascades National Park a couple years ago, the park ranger actually came by and told me that bears are often more likely to chase a dog than for a dog to scare it off. I had my dog tied up to the barbecue grill thing in the campground, and I thought I was going to get in trouble for it. And she was actually like, no, we prefer that they should be tied up because if they chase the bear, then the bear usually chases them back. And where do the dogs run back to? They run back to you or your campsite. So I find that very interesting. But this Valerie was very upset that her dog couldn't go anywhere in Grand Teton National Park. Frankie said, I've seen better in video games, and then SMH, which means shake my head. Mother Nature better step it up. That one's hilarious. Matthew said, wildlife is not as photogenic as I would have hoped. Was snowing in October? ? A local told me that happens around here, and he went back to eating his gluten-free paleo vegan avocado toast. So I think I read that one before. I love that review. I don't know. I just find these so entertaining. Okay, so for decades, whispers have echoed through this mountain valley. Stories of strange sightings, unexplained disappearances, and a feeling many described as being watched. From hikers who vanished without a trace to ghost sightings near Jenny Lake, there's something about these peaks that feels heavier than just the elevation. And we are going to do a brief overview of Grand Teton National Park. So if you don't want to listen to all of this, you do have a fast forward button you can use. Grand Teton National Park is in northwestern Wyoming and was established on February 26, 1929. It's approximately 310,000 acres, and the park includes the major peaks of the 40-mile-long Teton Range, as well as the most of the northern sections of the valley known as Jackson Hole. What is really cool about Grand Teton National Park is that it's only 10 miles away from Yellowstone National Park. So typically when people go and do these parks, they will just hit both. You can do both in a day. You could, but you wouldn't see a lot. So typically when people go to Yellowstone, they also go to Grand Teton National Park because it's so close, and the drive in between both is absolutely stunning. The human history of the Grand Teton region dates back to at least 11,000 years ago, when the first nomadic hunter-gatherer Paleo-Indians began migrating into the region during warmer months to pursue food and supplies. In the early 19th century, the first explorers or colonizers encountered the eastern Shoshone natives. Tools were found around the shore of Jackson Lake confirming this. One of the tools that was found is a type associated with the Clovis culture, and tools from this cultural period date back to at least 11,500 years. Some of the tools are made of obsidian, which chemical analysis indicate came from sources near present-day Teton Pass, which is south of the park. So I actually find this fact really, really intriguing. And if you didn't know, obsidian is found in a lot of states, and you can actually collect it if it's on public property like BLM land, and you can get it made into jewelry. And from what I've read online, obsidian is what most often arrowheads were formed and fashioned out of, or that's what the internet says, at least. The Lewis and Clark expedition passed well north of the Grand Teton Range. During their return trip from the Pacific Ocean, expedition member John Coulter was given an early discharge so he could join two fur trappers who were heading west in search of beaver pelts. Coulter was later hired by Manuel Lisa to lead fur trappers and explore the region around the Yellowstone River. Now, during the winter of 1807-1808, Coulter passed through Jackson Hole and was the first Caucasian to see the Teton Range. John Coulter is widely considered the first mountain man, and like those that came to Jackson Hole region over the next 30 years, he was basically there for the money that was very, very abundant because of all the fur trapping that he was doing. This region was extremely rich with highly sought-after pelts of beaver and other fur-bearing animals. So he went and stayed, and there's actually Coulter Bay is named after him. So a lot of people knew that this land was very special and they wanted to protect it. So in 1929, it was established as a national park, and its main purpose is to protect the Teton Range's major peaks. But the Valley of Jackson Hole actually remained in private ownership until the 1930s when John D. Rockefeller Jr. began purchasing land in Jackson Hole to be added to the existing national park. So from the time that it was established, it actually had land being added to it over a lot of years after it was established, because John D. Rockefeller Jr. wanted to make it larger and protect more of that land, or that's what Google says, at least. The park has numerous lakes, including 15-mile-long Jackson Lake, as well as streams of varying length and the upper main stem of the Snake River. Now, this is your trivia fact of the day. Some of the rocks in the park are the oldest found in any American national park and have been dated at nearly 2.7 billion years old. There are more than 1,000 species of vascular plants, dozens of mammals, and 300 species of birds. Because of all the rivers and lakes, there are more than a dozen fish species and a few species of reptiles and amphibians that inhabit Grand Teton National Park. There are more than 1,000 drive-in campsites and over 200 miles of hiking trails that provide access to backcountry camping areas. Now, Grand Teton is very visited, and it's one of the 10 most visited national parks in the U.S. It had an average of 2.75 million visitors from 2007 to 2016. And in 2021, there were over 3.8 million people that visited Grand Teton National Park. So who knows, this might be one of the next national parks that starts to institute reservations or timed entries. Even before Grand Teton National Park was officially established in 1929, the paranormal history of the area starts with the Shoshone and other native peoples who thought the Tetons were sacred and talked about ghosts living in the mountains. They narrated accounts of weird lights moving across the summits, which they said were signs of strong spiritual beings protecting the highlands. Now, this is all reporting from Bremer in 2025. Early European trappers and mountain men said that they heard disembodied voices echoing down canyons and felt like they were being followed while crossing isolated routes. During the homesteading period of the late 1800s and early 1900s, settlers wrote about strange things that happened to them in their notebooks. These included tools moving on their own, strange banging sounds, and seeing figures that vanished as they got close. These historical records established the foundation for ongoing paranormal stories about Grand Teton National Park. So weird stuff has been happening in this park since before its inception. And I think, as most of us know, most of the indigenous tribes always had, what we would call legends or folklore. But who's to say that it's all just a myth? There are so many accounts of settlers in out west that saw lights, heard voices, not just in Grand Teton National Park, but all over the western United States. And it just really is fascinating, especially all the stories about Utah, specifically Skinwalker Ranch. So first, I want to start with a Teton ghost story. Now, this is taken directly from indigenouspeoplesliterature.com. Long ago, there was a large band of Dakota Sioux Indians who had spread to a village in the present Jackson Hole Basin of Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. The Teton band flourished, and its people were healthy and strong because they ate plenty of buffalo meat. Usually when they camped for the night, a crier would go among the lodges and call, "There will be many buffalo tomorrow. Be on the alert." One day after the Tetons returned to their camp from a hard buffalo hunt, a young man announced that he wished to marry the most beautiful girl in the tribe, the chief's daughter. Her father said, "I will not give you my permission until you bring me many horses." So the young Indian set out in search of many wild horses, hoping to please the chief and win his beautiful daughter for his bride. But while the young man was away, his tribe abandoned their regular campsite and moved elsewhere. Later on, the young man returned to the deserted camp with several captured horses. As it was late in the day, he thought he would take shelter nearby in a solitary lodge. At first, he could not find a doorway into the lodge because the sides were covered halfway up with sod. Finally, he managed to make an entrance. Inside were 4 high posts that had been driven into the ground. The posts supported a kind of like burial bed. On the bed lay a woman whose clothes were ornamented with elk's teeth. She turned her head, looking down at the young Teton brave. He immediately recognized her as a member of his tribe, but now she was a woman ghost. They stayed there for a long time, and she became his wife. One day he said to himself, "I think I will go on a buffalo hunt." Although he did not speak it aloud, the ghost woman knew his thoughts and said, "You are hungry for buffalo meat? Mount your horse and ride back to the bluffs. When you come to the buffalo herd, rush into the center of them and shoot the fattest one. Bring home the hide and buffalo meat. Roast the meat and bring me a share before you eat yours." The young Teton brave left and followed the ghost woman's instructions. When he reached the valley, he came to a large herd of buffalo. He charged his horse at full speed into the middle of them and shot the fattest one. He skinned it and cut up the meat, carrying the robe and meat upon his pack horse. He skewered a large piece of meat and roasted it until it was cooked enough. Then he took it to Ghost Woman, who was standing at the center of the lodge. Her husband was startled to see her standing there. Rows and rows of beautiful beadwork decorated her leather clothing. Already knowing what the young brave was thinking, she said, "Please do not be afraid of me." From that time on, they talked freely and planned what they would like to do. The young Indian said, "Why don't we begin our life together like our parents did when they were first married?" But the ghost woman replied, "No, no, that would never do, because we will need to pitch our tent during the day and travel by night." Now he wondered about this arrangement. He was kind of confused. But this is how it happened that they traveled at night. Ghost Woman walked ahead with her head covered, never saying a word to her husband as they traveled. Her legs were invisible. She made no noise as she floated along, ghost-like. Whenever the young Teton brave thought about anything, Ghost Woman already knew what it was that he had in his mind. Is this why the Teton Indians say, "Beware of ghosts because ghosts know all things"? They say ghosts know when the wind blows and which ones. Ghosts know when there will be snow. Ghosts know when there will be thunder and lightning. Ghosts are glad when the winds blow because they can float along more swiftly as they travel from place to place. This is the way the Teton Ghost Woman and the young Teton Brave lived. Their tribal people never found them again. The chief's daughter wondered why her young brave never returned to her. Finally, the young brave also became a Teton ghost, floating along with the Teton Ghost Woman every night forever. In Grand Teton National Park, the most prevalent paranormal stories are those of ghosts or spirits. Many people say they have seen specific ghosts in certain places. People say they've seen the ghost of a young woman in old-fashioned clothes walking around on Mormon Row. They think it's the spirit of a homesteader who perished giving birth in the difficult winter of 1897. Park rangers and maintenance workers have seen the ghost of an old mountain man near Jenny Lake. Now, he apparently wears buckskin clothes and carries a long rifle, but he disappears when people approach too closely. There's also another very well-known ghost called the Lady of the Lake, and she's probably the most well-known one. People say she comes out of Jackson Lake on foggy mornings and is said to be connected to a terrible drowning that happened in the early 1920s. Both visitors and staff have said that they have felt cold patches, heard footfalls that they couldn't explain, and felt like they were being watched while hiking on secluded routes, especially in places where people have died or been in accidents in the past. Now, within Grand Teton National Park, there's a canyon named after death. It is literally called Death Canyon. So let's talk about it for a minute. Struthers Burt, which is a super badass name, sounds very cowboy. He was a dude wrangler in early Jackson Hole, and he used to camp in Death Canyon as a base for further Teton exploration. While camping there, Burt had 3 experiences with what he referred to as my ghost. The first time encountering his ghost, Burt was camped in the canyon with a doctor friend. It was like a gray day, so the snow on the ground, overcast, so Burt went to sleep early. But at some point during that night, he was awakened by footsteps and saw his partner leaving the teepee with his hands on his revolver. So his partner was awake and alert, stepping out of their camp, ready to presumably shoot whatever was out there. His partner was a doctor, and he swore he had heard someone approach the tent, but there were no tracks in the snow. The second encounter was a moonlit night, with shadows cast across the walls of the canyon. Burt was awakened again suddenly to find his companion crawling around the tent, again claiming to have heard footsteps. So not once, but twice, unexplainable footsteps that they hear, but there's no earthly evidence like footprints in the snow or anybody outside. Now, the third time, Burt himself was the one to actually encounter the ghost. While sitting around a fire with 2 companions, he suddenly jumped up at the sound of hoofbeats. Quote, "I had heard a horse galloping up the canyon, where no horse has ever been, and directly over me, and the hoofbeats were dying away in the further reaches of the meadows," wrote Burt. "I would swear to that." So he actually recorded, recorded as in wrote down his experiences with this ghost. And I guess he was kind of affectionate towards it. He just called it his ghost, my ghost. So this one sounds like, I don't know, it's just kind of creepy. That would creep me out if I were camping as well. So of all the places in Grand Teton National Park, few get as many questions about the name as Death Canyon. And it is a spooky name, and many people have kind of cringed at the idea of entering the canyon because it's named Death Canyon. Some people are superstitious, some people are a little stitious. Names, I don't know, do they hold meaning? Like enough meaning to stop you from going somewhere? Possibly for some people, not for me. I just think that's very interesting that it happened on 3 different occasions, and there were multiple people that experienced this ghost. As far as the name of Death Canyon, there are a lot of theories on how the canyon was named, but the most plausible is that a member of Thomas Bannon's 1899 survey party wandered into the canyon and was never seen again. So that is one theory. There are lots of them. That's probably the most accurate one of how it got its name. Now, in addition to ghostly sightings, people have also claimed other strange things have happened in the park over many, many years. Multiple independent individuals have seen strange lights moving in inconceivable patterns throughout the night sky above the Teton mountain range, just like what the Shoshone were seeing way, way, way back. Now, these sightings happened before modern drones or planes. So really, what could those have been? Hikers have said they've lost track of time on short trips. There are still cryptozoological stories of huge, unexplained monsters traveling through distant forests that don't match any known animal or the usual descriptions of creatures like Bigfoot. Reports of reality distortion are probably the most disturbing. Now, I'd never really, I've heard of these, but not in depth. So these are actually reports that occur when travelers claim to have seen landscapes, buildings, or trails that later turned out to be illusions or appeared very different upon their return. Witnesses typically feel quite upset and doubt what they saw after these events. So it's like you're being gaslit by your scenery, by the environment that you're in. It's like you're somewhere else. And when you return to that area, maybe you're hiking on a trail, it looks one way. And when you come back around, it looks totally different. I can't remember the story, but basically this happened quite a long time ago in France. And these 2 teachers basically experienced one of these like reality distortions where they were actually back in Versailles when it was like, I don't know, the 1500s or something. And they saw all these crazy things and had this crazy experience. And when they walked back around like a corner or something, they were back in present time. And those things, I think, happen more often than we know because people aren't going to be reporting that willingly because, let's face it, a lot of people would doubt their experience and think that they were crazy or on drugs or something. So I feel like this happens a lot and people just don't talk about it. But apparently it's happened in Grand Teton National Park quite a few times for it to be noted in some of these articles that I read. Another type of paranormal phenomenon that people report are audio anomalies. Just like Bert, there are many people who report that they've heard voices, music, and noises that don't seem to have a cause or an origin. People who camp said that they've heard people talking, kids laughing, and singing coming from vacant parts of the forest, especially around old historical places and old indigenous lands. Reports of voices calling hikers by name or frantically telling them to stay away from a certain region are even more troubling. Now, you can bet your ass that if I heard someone calling my name on a trail or telling me not to go somewhere, I would probably shit my pants and I would be absolutely scared. I think I would get off the trail as soon as I could. And again, I think this probably happens more often, but people just don't talk about it because it's scary. You don't understand it. And you kind of feel like, did that just happen? And you're not going to go talk about it for the most part unless you know 100%. And I feel like when these things happen, you doubt your own senses even. But here's the good side. Some people say these warnings saved their lives when they found out about dangerous conditions later. Park workers have recorded weird electronic voice phenomena like EVP and radio interference that can't be explained while utilizing communication equipment in some of the areas of the park. Now, these auditory experiences often happen when the weather is so bad that it makes things quiet, such as when it snows heavily or in the calm hours before the morning. And that probably the weather and the time of day makes these things, these experiences, seem even creepier than what they are. Now, all of these strange stories about Grand Teton National Park add to the park's cultural depth, whether you think they're real or just interesting tales. These stories link today's visitors to the native peoples, mountain men, and settlers or colonizers who formerly explored these beautiful areas and faced the same challenges that many visitors still face. I don't know, can even science or digital recording devices understand what's going on out here? There's a lot. There's a lot that's going on in Grand Teton National Park. And because there are so many visitors, I feel like there are so many stories, so many more stories that don't get reported. But maybe the real significance of these paranormal stories isn't how genuine they are, but how they remind us that even in our contemporary technological world, nature's beauty can still make us feel in awe, humility, and the fact that some things will still always be a mystery to us. The Tetons rise sharp and silent, always watching, and while most who walk their trails come away with nothing but awe and aching calves, a few people leave something behind, a story, a footprint, or in worst cases, nothing at all. This is a wild place and the oldest sense of the word, not just untamed, but unknowable. And maybe that's what haunts it, not just the echoes of those who went missing, but the feeling that the mountains themselves are holding their breath and keeping their secrets. Now, if you visit, and I hope you do, go prepared. Carry your gear, your map, your bear spray, but also carry respect, because sometimes nature doesn't give back what it takes. And in a place like the Tetons, the line between this world and the next feels just a little thinner. Thanks for hiking this eerie trail with me. Stay curious, stay safe, and as always, keep your eyes on the path and one ear open for what you can't see. As always, recreate responsibly and remember, sometimes the great outdoors aren't always great. Thanks for listening to Morbid Outdoors. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, make sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform. It's free, easy, and it helps us out immensely. When you subscribe, you get updates on our latest episodes, and it also boosts our visibility, making it easier for other curious souls to find us. Another great way to support Morbid Outdoors is by leaving us a review. Whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, a quick review helps us know what you love about the show. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at Morbid Outdoors Podcast. You can email us case suggestions and your campfire stories at morbidoutdoorspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks so much for the support, and I'll see you next time. Okay, so for those of you that care about what I do, my husband and I got back from Bear Lake recently. Bear Lake is just a beautiful lake in northern Utah and Idaho, and they call it the Caribbean of the Rockies because the water is just so blue. It is So pretty. It's great. There's, if you have a boat, you can boat, paddleboarding, kayaking, swimming. My husband and I, we went on a hike with our dog. We went to the lake. They have the most amazing restaurants, which is kind of fun because it's a really small town, but the food is absolutely phenomenal. And they are famous for raspberries. There's a lot of raspberries that grow around Bear Lake, and everyone always has to get a raspberry shake. So we had a great time at Bear Lake. We go every year, and it was just a nice weekend to disconnect and just sit outside when the weather is nice and cooler than it is in the valley right now. And it was just a great weekend. And I think that's like important for myself. And I hope for a lot of other people that even if you're not doing some big, huge, like grandiose trip, even a short weekend trip, 2 nights away at a pretty place, maybe still with even in your state. I mean, Bear Lake is only like 2 hours from us. It really just helps to reset, for me at least. It's a nice disconnect, reset, change of pace, change of environment. And yeah, so I think, sometimes you don't need a huge trip. You don't need to fly across the ocean to go to Europe or, plan like 7 different national parks in one week. You can just have a really great, rejuvenating, and transformational weekend just in your same state. And it can be the same, it can be somewhere you've already visited. It's all about, disconnecting online and enjoying being in the here and now. So, not that you guys, some of you like to hear the personal stuff, but that's just my little bit. I also want to give a book recommendation. I read a lot, and I read a book this summer, and it was really, really good. And it doesn't have a lot to do with nature per se, but this is a book that I was skeptical about reading because I'm very rooted in science, and critical thinking. However, I do indulge in a little bit of the woo-woo stuff because sometimes that stuff feels good to believe in. So anyways, the book is called Signs, The Secret Language of the Universe. And it is so good. It is by, oh crap, I think her name's Laura Keller Jackson. I think that's the author. A really good read. I mean, if you are like woo woo mixed with science and that's where you're at right now, I really liked the read. I thought it was a great book. And I'm just working on being more intentional in my life and enjoying the present moment. So anyways, I think that some of you might really like that read. She's got another book coming out in November, and I'm already pre-ordered it. I really, really liked this book. And that's saying a lot because typically I'm like all science, 100% all science. And there was a lot of science in this book, but a lot of it was more spiritual, I'll say. Anyways, I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you next time.